It's the Late Fun Guys podcast. I'm Samir. I got my co-host Mark.
Let's go.
Mark, everyone knows the outcome by now. Montreal lost in the Stanley Cup finals. I think they surprised us all by making it this far.
They sure did. They weren't supposed to really be here. Bergevin obviously built them for the playoffs. But, I mean, when you look at the finals, Toffoli was hurt. Groin, he didn't have it. Gallagher injured. Weber, Sharrett, you saw what happened with them. They weren't 100%. They just lost to a better team. Tampa has experience. They're almost considered a modern-day dynasty now. They closed out each of the teams they played in the playoffs. They shut them out in the last game. That doesn't happen by fluke. We lost a better team. It's as simple as that.
So I think even with a healthier roster, I think kind of the juice dried up. I mean, we did have a fantastic run from Game 5 against Toronto, sweeping the Jets and then taking Vegas in 6. But Tampa was just too good. I mean, analytically and on paper, they're a better team. They beat fantastic teams to make it that far. I mean, kudos to them. Florida was solid. They had an excellent season. Then they took out Carolina, and then they took out the Islanders in 7, and then they just knew how to shut us down. They were deeper in every position, and I mean, it's the first time we played a goalie like Carey Price, and Vasilevsky deserved that Conn Smythe trophy. So I think at the end of the day, we got to look forward. I think there's a bunch of cool pieces on this team. A lot of guys stepped up. We saw some of their true colors. I like the fact that the youth got a little bit more opportunities towards the end. It was sad to see KK out of the lineup, especially in Game 5. But hopefully we come back stronger and we make some adjustments.
And Evans is part of that future too. I think he deserved to get a chance after that unfortunate incident against Scheifele. But at the end of the day, the players got a lot of experience. I think that's key moving forward. Carey Price said he's only disappointed in the result. We know they don't give trophies for second place, but I mean, the way this team battled and persevered, it's something to be really proud of as a fan base. So I think it bodes really well for the future.
Yeah, and it was a really tough season, right? We started off extremely strong in the first 10 games, but I mean, we didn't have a training camp. We didn't have a preseason. I think the players in the league were still getting their feet under them. And then we start to lose.
I think that affects most someone like Romanov, who we barely saw in the finals. But what a Game 5 he had. He looked great out there. But when you factor in, second language and there's social distancing measures and compressed tutelage, that probably affected him. But, you would expect someone like him to really step up next year. But that was the effect of this compressed season was on him.
Yeah, and that created a challenge throughout the year. I mean, we started losing pretty early on, and Bergevin got nervous, right? And a lot of people were calling for his job very early on in the season. He felt the heat. He fired Claude Julien, he fired Kirk Muller, then he fired Stéphane Waite, brought in Dominic Ducharme.
He knew he was next.
He knew he was next, but I think a lot of us were not too pleased with the early results by Ducharme. He gave him the interim tag, and then the team gets hit with COVID. Then they have to play 25 games in 41 days. Very tough schedule. They barely sneak into the playoffs, right? They were the last team to qualify. There were teams that didn't qualify that had more points. And so it bodes the question next year. And you said it, right? This team is kind of built for the playoffs. Do we have the regular season pieces to be a competing force and repeat? Repeat. When I say repeat, I mean go on another run and hopefully challenge for the cup next year. Do we have that type of team? And I'm really not sure at this point.
I mean, when you look at what Corey Perry said in his post-game press conference, he's very emotional, and it sounded like they're really in harmony with that group of guys. So I don't imagine that they would want to change too much, but they could certainly use a mobile defenseman to move the puck up the ice. And there are going to be changes in the expansion draft that you're going to have to make. So we'll have to really see what happens. But
next year is going to be a season where we kind of return to normal, right? The teams are going to play each other at least 2 times. The divisions are going to go back to what they were, prior to COVID. We're going to have to play a lot of these teams again, like Tampa, Carolina, Florida, teams that we didn't play during the season. It's going to be tougher. There's going to be a lot more. There's going to be a little bit more rest in between games, but then you also have the potential for the Olympics to take out a big chunk of seasons. So you have a little bit of a compressed schedule. And then you're like you said, we're bringing in Seattle, a brand new team, and every team's going to lose one player. And so that bodes the question. It's like, who are the guys that you would want to protect and keep for next season?
Okay, so let's look at the UFA and RFAs of the Habs. Let's do like a rapid fire segment. What do you think of like Thomas Tatar? You bring it back?
I don't think so. I think
I don't think so too.
He's done. I think if the numbers right, like in terms of cap hit, he's a good in-season performer. But the question bodes: is he gonna sign for like 2-3 million? I don't think that's the case. I think it's a better offer somewhere else.
Cole Caulfield could take his place, and I don't think you bring him back. What about Joel Armia?
Again, it's all about the numbers, right? This team has a lot of big players. A lot of their key roster signed for big money, right? For example, Brendan Gallagher is going to start earning $6.5 million. So the question bodes for a guy that's going to score 15 goals and you show up 1 out of every 5 games and really show up in the playoffs. How much can you really pay that type of person?
Yeah, I think he's a useful player, but you can't fall in love with these depth guys. Maybe something like 2 years, $3 million per year. But if he wants more than that, then you have to let him go. How about Philip Deneau?
Absolutely. I think they need to find a way to bring him back. But again, I think what he's looking for and what the Habs are ready to offer is very different. He's not comparable to Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. I don't think he puts up that offense. The league doesn't reward defensive centermen like Philip Deneau, but he is kind of one of a kind and built a niche for himself. I think a number, between 4 and 5, 4.5 to 5 is the right number, and maybe giving them a little bit more term helps get the deal done.
Yeah, I mean, the Canadiens offered 6 years, $5 million, which I think is actually a good offer. Obviously, you wanted more, but he didn't get that many points during the season, but you'd have that distraction. What worries me about Deneau is that someone like Seattle, who has a blank sheet, could view him. We're not going to score much. We just want to win tight games. Let's throw him big money. So I think Canadiens should be wise, try to get a deal done and protect him. But maybe Seattle could be a perfect fit for him as a UFA.
I think the question for a team like Seattle is, are they going to be competitive year one? I don't think they're going to repeat what Vegas did and go to the Stanley Cup finals in the first year. I think that's an anomaly, especially with the deals that Vegas was able to do with the uncertainty around expansion. A lot of these GMs have experience in running an expansion draft now, so I don't think Seattle's going to get a lot of the perks that Vegas did. So I don't think Philip Deneau is going to want to leave to go to a brand new team that's not going to be competitive. I think that's really the question.
Give him a pizza endorsement. I think that would be a great start. Be like, we're a little short, but here's a deal for
Seattle has a great pizza chain called Pagliacci's. Okay. So I'm not sure. I wouldn't be surprised if they were the first ones to endorse him.
I can maybe pizza Napolitan or some. We'll have to cover that. But speaking of Seattle, so what are your thoughts on the expansion? Obviously, there's Mark Bergevin will have to submit his list in the next week.
And teams are required to submit their list by July 17th, 5 p.m. So it's either made public on July 18th at 10 a.m. And so that's going to give us a pretty good idea of who's available on each of the rosters. And as
Bergevin could do 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, 1 goalie, or 4 forwards, 4 defensemen, 1 goalie.
Yeah, I mean, I think let's wait and to see what they decide to do. I think for me, the question is, what are they going to do with Drouin? That's a big question because he's making $5.5 million. He has a cap hit for the next couple of years. So what do you do with a player like Jonathan Drouin?
I think you have to let Seattle fish him. Obviously, it's unfortunate for personal reasons. He wasn't able to play the rest of the season in the playoffs, but clearly there's something bothering him. It could be the pressure of Montreal, but at the end of the day, that's a real talent there. And I think for a team like Seattle, do you really think they're going to be able to get top 6 players available to them? they're going to be able to find third, fourth line players, some maybe 3, 4 defensemen, but it's like a top 6 forward is going to be very rare. So even at that cap hit, only at 2 years, I could view him as Seattle as something Seattle will want to take a chance on. And I think Bergevin should really try to fish Francis into taking him, even if it means giving a supplemental pick, like a 3rd round pick or a 4th round pick, in addition to Drouin, which seems crazy, but they could then use that cap space to get another player. And Montreal has 4 4th round picks, I believe 3 3rd round picks. So you have those assets, use them to be able to make the team that you want.
Yeah, they have actually 2 3rd round picks and 3 4th round picks. They traded their 3rd round pick this year. I think it was for Eric Stahl. So I think what you're saying kind of has some merit, but Mark, I don't think anyone's taking Jonathan Drouin. I think it'll be a struggle to trade this guy. I think if he doesn't get picked up, the question is really, are you going to buy this guy out? And you know, the way the cap spreads, it looks like it's a $1.8 million cap hit over the next 4 years. So are you really going to be able to move this guy? I don't think so. I don't think teams want to take a risk. Teams don't like taking a risk, especially in this kind of flat cap era. And a guy like Jonathan Drouin, there's no information out on why he's out, right? Is it Montreal? Is it other reasons? Is mental health? We don't know. Can he come back? Does he want to come back and play? There's a bunch of unknowns. I don't think a team like Seattle is ready to take that type of risk.
All I know, he's a real talent. I hope he gets a chance somewhere else, or if it's with the Habs. At the end of the day, it's a depreciated asset. So maybe you have to keep him and work without, but we don't know why. So we'll have to see there. But at the end of the day, Seattle is going to take someone. Who do you think that is, Samir?
So just to before I get there, just to wrap up on Troy, I think, you know, if you take away the mental health aspect, right, and the personal side of it, the player has been a bust. He hasn't really put up points that we thought he would. I think if you go back,
still a 50-point player.
He hasn't scored 20 goals in it's been 2-3 seasons since that happened.
He got put as a center. He's not a center. Injured. He took one for the team there. And he showed something in the bubble when he was playing with Suzuki. Of course, anyone looks good with Suzuki, but I mean, he had a good bubble performance last season.
The question is, like, if you were to go back and do that deal again, would you do it?
Of course not. No, we see Sergachev is a top 4 defenseman.
Yeah, so exactly. I think that's really what it comes down to. So he hasn't lived up to the expectation. If he had, you would do that deal every day, and you won't. No one will do that deal. So the end of the day, Drouin maybe needs a fresh start. But then at the other end, like just like what happened this year, maybe he comes back and no one has any expectations and he surprises everyone. So it could be a nice replacement. Let's see what happens. I think if you're Seattle, you want to go after a guy like maybe Sherratt, if he's available, or a Kulak, or even Jake Allen. I mean, Jake Allen has starting goalie pedigree. He has a very low cap hit, 2.875 next year for the next couple of years. And there are not a lot of good goalies on the market.
I disagree with you there. I think Vegas, their strategy was they just drafted a lot of defensemen, minimize the goalies that they picked, because then there'll be too many and teams know you're trying to trade goalies. Defensemen tend to be more valuable. So I think Sherratt is a big risk at $3.5 million. But from Marc Bergevin's standpoint, there's only 1 year left. So it's not that big a loss, because then he'll get a big increase afterwards. So Seattle could even trade that pick, trade Sherratt right before the trade deadline if they're not competitive, and get a couple of assets there. But I think they could even go after like a Jake Evans. I think he should be protected as part of that 7. But a Jake Evans, a low cost, salary cap is such a valuable commodity. So maybe they try to prick someone that's a good player that's a low salary cap. So I can see him getting picked also.
Yeah, remember what happened with Vegas? No one thought they would go after Emelin, and they went after Alexander Emelin, and they ended up trading him, and they got good return on him. So I think that's the absolute right thinking. They're going to go after players where they can get a return. If they're not competitive, they can trade them at the deadline and get a 1st or 2nd round pick. And that's going to be how they're going to build their future capital. So a guy like Drouin, if he busts and he doesn't end up doing well, Can you get anything for him? No. I think you would rather go after a little bit low risk, high return player where you can kind of understand what the return might be come trade deadline.
But that's why if Seattle's even remotely interested in Drouin and you have to throw a third round pick, do it. Because then you free up 5.5 million, which you can use to, first of all, you got to re-sign KK. So there's all these guys that are going to get increases. But maybe someone like Dougie Hamilton, who's a free agent, he's going to want the big bucks. But you could certainly upgrade, getting another free agent forward also. Maybe find a steal like Toffoli did in the offseason. You get something good value that's able to produce on the team. So it just gives you extra options in a salary cap that won't be
What do you
increasing.
think this team needs? I think let's start with there.
A mobile defenseman is very clear. It really starts there. The top four was worn down by the Stanley Cup finals. So I think if you could add something there, I think Romanov will be able to take a step up next year. But, Bergevin loves defense. You can never have enough of it. So, yeah, sign me up for that. But
I think they need a power play specialist, a mobile defenseman that can play power play minutes, big power play minutes. We're missing that Markov type talent. That's going to be hard to find, but they're going to need to go out and find someone like that. And I think they need some help on the left wing. They need a left-handed shot who can put the puck in the net. They got a lot of right-handed shooters. They need someone from the left side. It's unfortunate, like Tarasenko is asked for a trade, but he's a right-hand shooter. So
when you look at Sharrett, even if he gets taken, maybe you could find an upgrade on that, right? Yeah, that costs a little more, but you free up 3.5 and you have some extra space. You get someone better than him.
Yeah, and that's very possible too. So
what do you think about their center depth?
I think for the first time, it's pretty good. You look at Nick Suzuki. I think he's solidified a number one center position. Yeah. I think KK still is very young. He's gonna blossom. I think he's gonna turn out to be a really good player. Then your third line, Philip Deneau, if they can re-sign him. You have Jake Evans. You have Ryan Poehling in the minors, but waiting for an opportunity. And then, you can go and find a depth centerman for your fourth line. In offseason.
Even at that, I wouldn't even consider that unless Deneau doesn't sign. Then I would maybe look at bringing back a Stahl as a fourth line center. But I want Poehling to get a shot next year. I think he's a first round pick. This is it now. Unfortunately, he was injured, so he didn't get a chance to play in the playoffs. But you really got to see what you have in your youth and. Already
challenge their market. I think we've seen that in the past. The challenge with that mark is you don't know what you have, right? And so you can't build a roster, especially that just came out of the Stanley Cup finals. You can't build a roster based on, okay, I want to give these guys an opportunity and think I'm going to have the same results. Yeah. It's one, these guys need to take away. They need to take away during the season roles from guys that you given that who that can perform, right? So they need to prove it. I just can't give roster spots to players based on what I think might happen. And we've done that in the past and it hasn't worked well.
Look, it's a big year for KK. I think he'll get like a bridge contract, but we need to give him the opportunity to shine. And so that's all that it's about. Like Suzuki's your core, KK's your core. Because if not, if you don't give him the opportunities, you don't trust him, you got to put him in situations and let him grow. He's a very smart, capable player. We saw flashes, but he also struggled in flashes. He didn't play games 4 and 5. So you really gotta set him up for success.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's a couple of, few other more veteran guys. Like, what do you do with like a Lehkonen, for example? Yeah. And you keep Paul Byron, right? He's got a pretty hefty cap hit at 3.4 million for the next 2 seasons. So what do you do with those two?
I mean, these are depth guys. You'd love to have them, but if they want too much money, we know Byron is under contract, married to a French Canadian. So he wants to be here. You heard him post game. The Habs means a lot to him. I mean, if Seattle, maybe you package him with a pick for Seattle to take so you could keep everyone else. But I mean, you saw what he does in the playoffs. He's valuable on the PK. Lehkonen too, a valuable piece, but it comes down to dollars and cents. If you keep a certain cost control, keep them. If not, they're depth forwards, and hopefully you have enough in the pipeline to be able to replace them.
Yeah, and I think then if you just round out the rest of the guys, I think John Merrill walks, Eric Gustafsson walks. I don't think we signed those guys. So it's going to be an interesting offseason, I think, for a lot of teams, especially with the fact that, $81 million gets injected into the overall total pie with Seattle, and they're going to pick up players. So teams are going to have a little bit more money to spend, and they're going to be able to pay a little bit more of these guys. But again, as long as the cap remains flat, teams are going to have some pressure. So there are going to be some interesting things coming up in the next couple of weeks. I'm looking forward to it, and I think we'll be back on to bring you guys all up to date on definitely expansion, the players available, free agency, and obviously the NHL entry draft.
Yeah, hopefully there'll be lots of wheeling and dealing that Seattle stirs, so that we'll be able to talk about it.
So finally, just to round things up, I think the question is in the front office, right? What do you do with Dominic Ducharme?
Ducharme comes back for sure. That'll be done shortly.
I think they give him a 5-year deal. I think he's going to get the full package. You getting to a Stanley Cup final as an interim coach, I think definitely is the best outcome you could ask for. So that besides winning the cup, so I think he definitely gets a full contract. And Bergevin, it seems like he mentioned in one of his press conferences earlier in the playoffs, he said, if I win the cup, I'm going to retire. And then he's like, then I can retire. And then in his post end of the season press conference, he said, I have 1 year left and I'm going to honor that.
Yeah.
So is Marc Bergevin need a break? Does he not want to resign?
Well,
as much as some of us want to get rid of him.
Imagine you're under the microscope for a decade straight, and there was some good times and a lot of pressure. So yeah, maybe he does want a break. Maybe he'll be president of operations or take a less high profile gig. But whatever he decides, I think at this point, if he wants to re-sign with the Canadiens, Molson will write him that check. I think based off the results of this year, he was very close to leaving, but he finally achieved what he wanted to. So I think really the ball is in his court.
All right. Well, we'll see. We have an interesting couple weeks before kind of the off season, so we'll be back on very soon. Go Habs, go!
Let's go.